Hello and welcome back to the Scale Modelling Cafe, and welcome to the next part in the Eduard 109F in 1/72 scale. In this episode I'll be dealing with the cockpit, the construction and the painting and weathering, and it all starts with some tiny little photo etch. This is fiddly enough in 48th, let alone in 72nd, but actually it really does dress up the cockpit nicely. So you can see there I had put the plastic wheel in, but that was ripped off and then replaced with the photo etch. It is much more refined, and the wheel actually is coloured, and that will go on at the end of the painting. Now it's just a question of building up all the components. So separate seat backs on the sprues. There is the separate seat for the, almost like the E version seat, so for the very early F. And just going around and adding most of the parts. Not all the parts were added at this stage, so things like the control column, for example, that was left off because it's much easier to paint it separately. So just adding all the little chains and things like that on the other side. The cockpit is really nicely detailed straight from the box, but no doubt there is going to be some resin coming along down the line. Here I'm just removing some of the plastic. This is the oxygen instrumentation. This is going to be replaced with photo etch, so it's a fairly easy job just to remove all that. This control box things that goes on, that's had its raised detail removed already in preparation for the photo etch. And just a little dab of glue there just to tidy up some of the scratches. This stuff's brilliant, VMS Metal Prep. I use it all the time now, and you only need to squeeze a tiny bit onto a small brush, and it's a sort of etching primer, if you like, and I just brush it onto all the metal work, and it really does work. It makes a real difference. So everything was primed with Mr. Surfacer Black, and then I thought I'd do a bit of pre-shading actually, so I went in with the MRP White and just picked out the centre of the panels and the highlights and things. Actually, in hindsight, as with all pre-shading, I think it's a bit of a waste of time, if I'm honest. It's you just don't get the control that you get with post-shading. So I shan't be doing this again. But it's always good to sort of revisit some old techniques sometimes, because you never know. Sometimes these old techniques, you forget if they are useful. Actually, I don't think pre-shading is, but you know, you have to try it to find out and learn the old lessons, I guess. So the RLM 66 is MRP again. It is my favourite paint. I think it's brilliant stuff. So that was just misted on, trying to let the pre-shading go through. I must do a video on pre-shading. Not a rant, but just a chat video, and just to outline the reasons why I think it's a bit of a waste of time. So here we are, post shading, which is far superior, much more control. So just a few drops of RLM02 actually added to the RLM 66. By adding the RLM02, it keeps roughly the same tone, and it just warms it up a little bit for those highlights. Now for the detail painting, there's actually quite a lot of detail painting required in this cockpit. So my paint of choice is Ammo of MIG. So here I'm just painting the oxygen regulator, undercoating it in white, ready for the blue. And that will make the blue just sort of pop a little bit more. And that will have some colour photo etch over the top in due course. There were some various boxes and things and dials and whatnot. They were picked out in black. And same for the cockpit tub as well. On the floor, these little control boxes down there. Now in the other model, I did actually add some wiring, but I wanted to keep this relatively straight from the box. So I didn't add it in this one, and the canopy is going to be closed on this one anyway, so I didn't see the point in adding any extra wiring. The leather back rest, that was picked out with a sort of leathery colour, and I used the same colour on the boot of the control column. Now for some chipping, and just using the sponge method, you get quite a lot of control with this actually. The trick is though to remove most of the paint and then just really lightly just go in and dab it, and you can put it in tweezers for a little bit more control. And I wanted a little bit more chipping just on the backrest. That's where the pilot's parachute would sit, and his back cushion and stuff. And then getting in there by the rudder pedals. And again, I didn't bother using the photo etch rudder pedals. I didn't see the point if I was going to have the canopy closed. I mean, you could argue there's no point doing all this chipping, but I like it. And not forgetting the sidewalls, very, very light chipping here. I didn't want to go too mad. And then from the ultimate control, a silver pencil. I've had this one for years. Almost using a kind of dry brush technique there on the footrests. Just adding a little bit of sort of scratching, if nothing else. This is tiny. This is the leather strap for the cannon breech cover. So it was picked out in that leather colour. And now for the various little sort of knobs and things. These were quite colourful actually in the real thing. There's yellows and reds and all that kind of stuff going on. So white as an undercoat, and that will make it pop. And the smallest bit of detail in the cockpit was the buckle on the leather strap. I just picked out in silver. On with the wash now. This is the Enamel PLW, and just using pure black, because obviously it's a dark grey cockpit, and this will just make all that raised relief just sort of sing and pop and lift out from the background. So sometimes I'll make up my own oil wash, sometimes I'll use the Tamiya stuff, but I'm not overly keen on the Tamiya stuff. I think it dries quite hard. And sometimes I'll go back to the good old PLW. Does work best on a shiny surface, and that's what the MRP gives you. It's very smooth. It is quite glossy actually. and you can see just touching it, and it will just flow around all that detail. And you can see how it sort of pulls, and then as it dries back, it'll shrink back a little bit. Trax wash, this is really good for just overcoating the sort of leather and canvas. And then we'll go in when it's dry, we'll go in with a clean brush with a little bit of enamel thinners, and we'll just tidy everything up. You can blend it quite easily, same as the oil wash. And you can see when everything's cleaned up there how effective the detail is. It's really nice cockpit. So just finishing off on the cockpit tub, and then when I've done this, it'll be one of my favourite stages actually, and that will be adding all the other colour photo etch bits, because that will really make it pop. So on with the colour photo etch then. So this is that trim wheel thingy. You see how small it is. Now my super glue is going off a bit. I do need to get some more. And when I do, I should keep it in the fridge. I just don't listen to my own advice. Being out here in the Middle East, it does lose its stick really quite quickly. And I keep it in the fridge, then I get it out, and then when I finished, I forget. And then it goes off. Brilliant. So the seat harnesses, these are multi-part, and I'll just glue it to the side bits first. I'll let that go off, and then when I know it's dry, I'll come in and I'll just fold it into place. Some people fold it up before, but yeah, I don't. Shoulder harness, that just pops into place, and I tend to do the lap straps first and then the shoulder harness over the top. And there we are, belts are on. So now for the colour photo etch on the right hand wall. Sometimes I'll use the tweezers, sometimes you can actually pick up the tiny parts with just the tip of a scalpel blade. Quite a few bits that go into the cockpit sidewalls, and especially on that sort of control box thing. And there's the two halves after a matte coat. Nearly forgot the yellow fuel pipe. That's actually clear in the kit. And the instrument panel is really nice, as you might imagine. What I tend to do is varnish the instrument panel first on the fret. And there is the finished cockpit. You can see that just using those painting techniques, how it really does pop that detail out. It is lovely. So that's the end of part 2. Coming up in part 3, I'm actually going to build the airframe. So what you can expect in that is a little bit of re-riveting, having scribed the centre seam. The wing to fuselage join is it's an absolute joy. And I take my life into my own hands and glue the canopy. So all that's coming up in the next part. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you then. Cheers, bye bye.